will reconvene the meeting of February 14th, 2012. May we have roll call?
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Is there a closed session report?
There's no closed session report this evening.
All right, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Hill, followed by the invocation by Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
Please lead me. I'd love to lead you, Russ. I pledge allegiance. It's been a long day already. You need a script? Please follow me and salute in our great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. Please remain standing. Our Father and God, we gather here today to ask your blessings upon our community. We ask that you would imbue our decisions with wisdom, with compassion, and with the foresight, that we might govern our city wise and well. We ask your blessings upon all of our residents. In your name, amen.
We have no presentations tonight. Madam Clerk.
The city provides the yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
Councilwoman Daigle.
Yes. As indicated at our last hearing on February 28th, our next hearing requested that it was actually out of a courtesy to our neighbors in Huntington Beach who feel that they would bear the brunt or are bearing the brunt of any sort of a bridge construction, that the council weigh in on our current position on the 19th Street Bridge. And as part of that, if we could have a representative from OCTA present, I'd appreciate that, so we have inaccurate information from a group that has oversight. And then secondly, I would appreciate a staff report that identifies the pros and cons, and if in fact there are reasons detrimental to Newport Beach that we would not do that, then I'd like to hear about that as well. So a staff report and pros and cons would be very helpful, and a representative of OCTA. And then if our manager could also let the managers in Huntington and Costa Mesa know that we'll be holding the hearing, that would be helpful. So thank you.
Councilman Hinn.
Okay, a few announcements. We have a few meetings coming up. The Tidelands Committee meets on tomorrow, actually, at 4 p.m. At the Oasis from 4 to 5:30. And then the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee meets from 4 to 5:30 on Thursday, the 16th, in the council chambers here. And then the Balboa Village Citizens Advisory Panel meets from 4 to 5:30 on Tuesday, February the 21st, in the Nautical Museum. All three of those meetings, I think, stand to be substantive with their agenda items, and I encourage all members of the public that have an interest to please come. We need your input. Lastly, I am very pleased to make an announcement tonight regarding our Lower Newport Bay dredging project. As some of you may know, the Tidelands Committee has been organizing or helping to organize with staff an expanded dredging project for Lower Newport Bay now that we have completed the dredging of the Rhine Channel. The project was structured to be a $7.5 million project, now $7.8 million because of some changes in the contracting on it, and would take the by far the greatest portion of the dredging that needs to be done in the lower bay to a depth of -11 mean low water, which means that we would cut off the high spots in a large portion of the bay to really improve navigability, and along the way also clean up a good bit more sediment that is not otherwise disposable in the open ocean, and to do it in the Port of Long Beach. And this project was set up, let's say, for $7.8 million. It was looking like we were $2 million short in terms of our total, and needing to go out and see if we could find private donation money to support that. Well, I'm very, very pleased to report tonight that we have just been informed by the federal government, I guess the Army Corps of Engineers, that the federal government has allocated an additional $2 million for the benefit of Newport Beach for this project. And that essentially funds the project with a shortfall of just maybe $250,000. And I'd like to request staff to come back at the next council meeting to expand the city's contribution to this project from $2.5 million to approximately $2.75 million to make up that shortfall, such that the entire project will now be funded with assured funding by governmental agencies, federal, county, and city. And so that's a tremendous advance here to assure the improvement of our harbor. I still don't think that lets the private harbor community off the hook, though, because we do believe that there are other dredging opportunities in the harbor that would really make for a full, complete project in this respect for the time being. And so staff will be organizing a review of other high spots in the harbor that might not have been covered by the original project, and we'll still be interested in seeing if we can generate some private donation money to really do a bang-up job here with this dredging. It's that in conjunction with the Rhine Channel is just a major advance for the improvement of our harbor this year. And so thanks to staff, thanks to the Army Corps for being so vigilant for us and helping us to get this additional federal money. Thanks to council members, Councilmember Daigle and others who have been so active in helping to promote this program. So very pleased and look forward to that agenda item, perhaps if we can, at the next council meeting.
Councilman Selich?
I have no announcements this evening.
Councilman Hill?
I would like to request staff look into, but to brief council on the implementation progress for the improvements on Irvine Avenue at Newport Harbor High. I was under the belief that we would have a flashing signal in place by this point in time, and I'd like to know what the status of that was, and I'd like to have you communicate with the high school as well and determine where they are on their commitments as to what was going to take place, and so that the council could be briefed on that.
Councilman Rosansky?
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, first of all, happy Valentine's, everyone. If you're home watching this live, take somebody to dinner while you still can. Don't waste your time doing this.
No, watch us, watch us.
Earlier in the last week, the city manager, the city attorney, representatives of the police department, and I met at the request with representatives of the district attorney's office to discuss their efforts to promulgate ordinances which regulate sex offenders in public parks. And we looked at what other cities in Orange County are doing. About 9 cities have adopted ordinances. Many of these have differences between them. There is some ongoing validation going on that needs to be evaluated to determine whether or not this is a good thing for Newport Beach or not. But I'd like us to put on study session a review of the status of this, a review of whether or not these ordinances, in fact, have been validated, and an evaluation from the police department as to whether such an ordinance would be valuable for Newport Beach.
Thank you. I would like to show everyone that's our LEED silver certification for the Oasis building. The council had said that all public buildings should be LEED certified, and that's one of our first after that was passed. I'd also like to announce that special event grant applications are due tomorrow, February 15th by 5 p.m. If you have an event that you wish to hold in the city and you're interested in applying for financial assistance or even, say, waivers of fees, then you need to apply by that date. You can go to www.newportbeachca.gov/special events for an online application. And then just as a note, I've received several emails wondering who's paying for the extra police coverage for the police visit. We are, but we did that when President Bush came. We do it when any president comes, so it's just one of the expenses of doing business with our security needs. Apparently they used to the Secret Service used to do some reimbursement, but we don't do that anymore. Is that correct?
It's just less than it
Less,
was
all right.
previously.
So we still get some. All right. All right. The consent calendar.
All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 13, and supplemental item S21 are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. The council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the council votes on the motion unless members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Councilman Hill,
Nothing.
Councilman Rosansky,
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry,
No items?
Councilwoman Daigle,
None, thank you.
Councilman Henn,
None for me.
Councilman Selich.
I have none.
I would simply note that I will be voting no on items 5 and 6, and that on item 13, John Heffernan has asked to have his name withdrawn. Now, is there any member of the staff have anything they wish to remove?
No.
All right. Any member of the public like to have something removed?
Yes, my name is Tim Payon. I'm here on behalf of Gulf Realty Fund. We would like to have item C5 and only item C5 removed.
Okay. Anyone else?
Jim Mosier, number 9, and number S21.
Hi, Laura Curran, number 1. Thank you.
Are there any others? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I would move the adoption of the consent calendar with the exceptions of items 1, 5, 9, and S21.
Second.
Please vote.
Prior to reading the votes, I have to read the titles for resolutions and ordinances. Resolution number 2012-14, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, this for item 3, approving the transfer agreement for fiscal year 2011 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant Program purposes between the City of Newport Beach and the City of Santa Ana, and authorizing the city manager and the emergency services coordinator to act as the authorized agents to execute on behalf of the city any actions necessary to implement the transfer agreement and obtain federal financial assistance provided by the Federal Department of Homeland Security and subgranted through the State of California Emergency Management Agency. Item 4, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach prohibiting skateboarding on certain streets and sidewalks and rescinding resolution number 2002-13. Item 5 was pulled, so item 6, ordinance number 2012-4, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving Plan Community Development Plan Amendment number PC 2008-001 for property located at 1600 East Coast Highway. Ordinance number 2012-5, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving development agreement number DA 2010-005 for property located at 1600 East Coast Highway. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. All right. Item number 1, Laura Curran.
Hi, my name is Laura Curran. I live in Corona Del Mar. I'd like to comment on the minutes from the special meeting about priorities. It stated that I would like to have the meeting recorded for the purpose of the minutes, and it also stated that I commended council for their focus on integral facilities and drug rehabilitation facilities, and those 2 items are correct. But I also spoke at that time and asked that the council move forward with implementation and enforcement of the integral facilities ordinance on all facilities which are integral, including those in Corona Del Mar. And the reason this is important is because all facilities should be subject to the public hearing process and to the same regulations so that we're fair. And if you wonder if this is an issue, I was at an event last week, and I had 3 people tell me, oh, I thought all the rehabs were on the peninsula, not on Corona Del Mar. So clearly there is a need from a standards applications perspective and from a community perspective to move forward and to document that request from the residents. Thank you.
Laura, I'm not clear. Are you asking us to amend the minutes?
Yes, I'm asking you, thank you, to amend the
add
minutes.
that-
I apologize.
That statement, okay.
Yes, I
Yeah.
apologize, to amend the minutes. Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I would move the minutes be approved as amended.
Second?
Second.
Please vote.
And just to note, there were also other amendments provided out on the back table and to council.
All right.
And, correct.
Item number 5,
Motion
Mr.
carries
Payon.
unanimously.
Mayor Gardner, members of the council, Tim Payon again. We are requesting, I'm requesting on behalf of Gulf Realty Fund, that the approval of their development agreement and the PC text ordinances be continued for 2 to 4 weeks. We have some issues regarding how they ended up. We'd like the opportunity to speak with staff and with the city attorney's office and see if we can resolve those issues.
All right. Is there a motion?
Let me ask a question first, ask the city attorney. Will this in any way hinder the Bay Club's ability to move ahead with their project?
No, it would not.
Okay. With that, I would, do you want 2 or 4 weeks? Okay, I'll move for a 2-week continuance of this item, next meeting.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance titles. Ordinance number 2012-2, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving Planned Community Development Plan Number PC 2005-002 for the Newport Beach Country Club property located at 1600 and 1602 East Coast Highway, and ordinance number 2012-3, an ordinance of the City Council, although we're not approving this, approving development agreement number DA 2008-001 for the Newport Beach Country Club property located at 1600-1602 East Coast Highway. With that, the continuance is unanimously approved.
All right. Item number 9, Mr. Mosier.
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. This item is your consideration of an agreement with what I would perhaps describe as a sort of ambulance chasing business called MAXIMUS that promises to move public funds for us from state accounts to local accounts for a very substantial cut taken out of whatever they manage to move for us. This was briefly discussed at yesterday's Finance Committee meeting. I didn't entirely understand it then. I still don't entirely understand it. But as best I can tell, we were offering to pay Maximus something like $317,000 to move $460,000 from Sacramento to Newport Beach. That seems to me to be a net loss to the state's taxpayers, and I don't regard that as a good stewardship of the public trust. But what really bothers me about this is the contract from 1998 that is attached to the back of this staff report and was not part of what was reviewed at the Finance Committee. And I was also bothered by the statement made at the Finance Committee, if I understood it correctly, that Maximus is effectively holding a gun to our heads at the moment in the sense that if we don't authorize this by tomorrow, February 15th, we will lose the right to seek reimbursements from the state. Regarding the contract, this was signed back in 1998 by a former revenue manager. I see no indication on this that in accordance with charter policy it was reviewed by the city attorney. I see nothing on here that it was filed with the city clerk, and nobody even seemed to review it to notice that it said here that it's an agreement between the county and the consultant. So I don't think this was reviewed very carefully, and it apparently, if I understand the staff report, is in some sense committed an expenditure of public funds of many hundreds of thousands of dollars, which not even the city manager could have approved, and yet it was approved by a lower-level person in the city staff. I would not be so concerned if that was a problem that happened years ago and is not happening still, but those of us who read the newspaper would have seen this front-page story in the Daily Pilot last month about a reservoir cover in which case somebody, this is just a few years ago, somebody in the Public Works Department, again, without any authority under our charter, seems to have bound the city to an agreement by which we may possibly have signed away, if that person had the authority to do that, the right to many millions of dollars of compensation for this defective product. I don't really understand this enough to recommend what you should do about it, but the problem of contracts not following charter policy seems to be, to me, a continuing one that needs your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Does staff have any comment on that? No. All right. Do I have a motion?
I would move approval of the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there public comment on the motion? Seeing none, please vote. Oop. Our votes.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Councilmember Rosansky and Councilmember Hess. Motion carries unanimously.
All right. And item number S21, Mr. Mosher?
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosher. This is a resolution amending the structure of the Special Events Advisory Committee, or SEAC. The staff report identifies SEAC as an important citizens advisory committee. I just wanted to make the general comment that if the council feels there is a need to create a citizens advisory committee, as it apparently felt at some time, I'm not entirely sure why the council is not following the procedure for creating such advisory boards and commissions that is spelled out in the city charter, and instead proceeding by resolution as we're doing here. But however that may be, I am still puzzled, as I think I mentioned once before in connection with SEAC, why we need even in our revised policy, it still says that the members of SEAC can be persons who are not residents of the city, and if we were following the charter rules for establishing advisory boards and commissions, one of the requirements is that would be electors of the city who serve on the committee. I'm not entirely sure why we think we have to go outside of our own city to find people who are expert in funding of events. And I also, more generally, I don't believe it's proper that everybody who is on this committee should be a professional in the event promotion business. The events that they select are going to be paid for by everybody in the city, and I think the evaluating committee should be a cross-section of the people who are going to have to pay for them.
I think if you would look at the new member, you would see that he has no connections with any special event in the city. So.
Yeah, yes, but previously it said recommendations of the conference and Chamber of Commerce and so forth. That's been deleted, but it still says everybody on here should be professionals with experience in event organization and promotion. And I think some of the people should just be general citizens who are going to have to pay for this and not have a special event promotion interest.
Thank you.
I believe that Mr. Mosher's is confusing the difference between a commission and a committee, and that's the difference between the two, and why the charge section doesn't apply.
Could you say that a little more slowly, Aaron? I think people didn't get that.
Sorry. I believe Mr. Mosher is confusing commissions and committees, and the reason the charge doesn't apply is because this is a committee.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there public comment? Seeing none, please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the resolution title, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, changing the membership term and duties of the Special Event Advisory Committee. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
All right, and public comments?
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Is there any public comment on non-agenda items?
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. I hate to monopolize your meeting, but I do have a comment. As you know, we charge each person who stays in one of our city's hotels and short-term lodging units a bed tax. Some years ago, we decided to give a portion of that bed tax to a private nonprofit formed for the sole purpose of attracting still more visitors to Newport Beach. In 2009, under sanction of state law, we allowed 6 of the larger hotels to band together into what is called a tourism bid, an additional joint marketing effort to attract conference business. The nonprofit is called Visit Newport Beach, and we currently provide them something like $2.8 million of bed tax each year and another $1 or $2 million through the T-bid. One might think the public has a legitimate interest in knowing what this organization is doing, and indeed the state law requires that the T-bid meetings be open and public, presumably so we can assure that they are not colluding to fix prices or do some other nefarious activity. That concern is heightened for the few of us who read the papers last year and know that an auditor investigated Visit Newport Beach and noted serious problems, including some that might endanger their nonprofit status, potentially causing our tax dollars to be gobbled up with past due tax bills and penalties. Among those were officers making contracts from which they made a clear personal profit. Last month, this notice was posted here at the City Hall and in our Central Library, announcing the quarterly meeting of the Visit Newport Beach Board of Directors, which appeared to be a luncheon banquet at taxpayer expense at one of the board members' hotels, the Island Hotel in Fashion Island. At the banquet, all of the members of the T-Board were present, and according to this agenda, they were discussing an antitrust agreement and the results of their conferencing promotion efforts. I want the council to know that when I went to this Island Hotel on the day of this meeting announced on our bulletin board out here and politely asked to observe this meeting, I was equally politely shown the door and told the meeting was not open to the public. What I really want you to know is how profoundly disappointed I am by the city staff's response to this matter. Rather than defending the public's legitimate interest and right to attend that meeting, their solution was to search for a legal loophole which would allow the Visit Newport Beach Board to continue meeting secretly and ensure that I don't learn the date, time, or place of any of their future meetings. Frankly, I expected better from this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just briefly, I think that Mr. Mosher is slightly confused by the requirements of the law on this matter. The Brown Act does not apply when Visit Newport Beach is meeting for purposes not related to the T-bid. It only applies when Visit Newport Beach is specifically meeting on the T-bid. So he does not have a right to attend those other meetings, and is specifically provided for in the Streets and Highways Code and the Government Code.
Thank you.
I have a question. Was the meeting publicly posted, and if so, why are they publicly posting meetings if the public is not welcome?
Yeah, I think that is a very good question. The meetings were mistakenly posted here at City Hall, and that's been corrected.
Is there any other public comment?
This is on non-agenda items, correct? First, I'd like to thank the council, because going back several months at least, I know that...
Tell us who you are, Max.
It's Max Liskin. I live in Newport Beach. The bay and dredging of it, I think, is something which is very significant, and I think that a lot of work went into the outcome that we have, and I just was prepared to make certain remarks about that, encouraging other community participation. That's really not necessary, but I would say if there is some type of fund, I would like to participate, and I have acted on those promises before, and I would encourage other people to do so as well. The main reason I came here tonight, now that with the announcement about the dredging's out of the way, is a few months, I guess in the past couple months, there's been issues that have been trumpeted in the newspapers about conflict of interest alleged with council people. And I think it's very easy to, in a small town, to get headlines before all the facts are discovered. And I'd just like to give what I think is somewhat of a different perspective. I have frequently, and perhaps too frequently, come to this council and remarked about items, and most of the time it's when I disagree about something. And very few people who come to the council are here other than for the reason that they want something. And that might be something that people say, well, it's for the good of the community or for the good of the business, but they're here to get something. And I think you all as a group are in a very precarious position where you have to balance all those needs. And I think that position is even made more precarious because the way government works in Newport, so I understand it, is each council person has to live in the community that they represent. Now, some go further than that and actually work in those communities. And I would not want to be the person that has to judge whether or not that fine line of the debate about where that line is for a conflict, where when a person who represents the community lives there and works there and is on this council. And I just, as a citizen, would like to say that I very much support all of the efforts that you guys put into this process. And I think people are mistaken if they think that it's a job where you come here on a Tuesday night and that's about the end of it, aside from preparing for the meeting. I know from the requests that I make upon council members the tremendous amount of time that you all put into it. So I'd just like to say thank you. The gears of justice will turn, but my feeling is that each of you in your own way makes a tremendous contribution to this city. And I think it's very easy to write an article and skip on to the next topic, but you guys have to put a lot of work into every decision you make. So that's thank you.
Well, thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Denise Oberman. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I just wanted to, I know that the council is planning to make an adjournment at the end of the meeting in honor of Dolores Otting and her unfortunate passing. And I did want to say that Dolores did exhibit an unwavering and passionate commitment to the civic affairs and attempted to always promote transparency and accountability and to see that policies were developed and administered in a manner consistent with the public interest. So I do appreciate the council's recognition, and I want to encourage everybody in our community, whether they may agree or not agree with particular sentiments that Dolores had, to honor her memory and encourage everyone in our community to participate and have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to the public hearing. I'd like to go out of order just to facilitate someone going home early. So we'll take number 19.
That's current business.
Carol, do you want to ask, or do you want to make a request? No, all right. I understand that you would like to have this continued for 2 weeks, a month?
Mayor?
Yes.
I think you just need to make a quick motion to just basically take it out of order.
Oh,
Take
all
the
right.
item out of order.
I'll move we take the item out of order.
Second.
Public comment? Seeing none, please vote. Okay.
Motion.
All right. Do we have a motion then to continue this?
I'll move that we continue the item per the request of the applicant.
Second.
I'm sorry, just for my notes, it was for what period, the continuance?
2 weeks.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Is there any public comment on this? All right, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, and now back
will we be
into our
doing-
order.
oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry,
Go
go
ahead, go ahead,
The
Leslie.
committee reports,
Did I did that, I'm sorry.
not a problem.
All right, Leslie, you have a committee report.
Okay, here we go. Aviation. One of our council priorities is to minimize the adverse impacts of John Wayne Airport through the implementation of the city's airport policy. The city's aviation committee meets monthly to discuss JWA issues and gain a greater understanding of factors that influence the airport's operations and growth pressures. I currently chair the aviation committee, and for those of you who are interested in airport issues, we meet fourth Monday of every month in the Friends Room at the library at 8 a.m. At our last meeting in January, the committee discussed the city and county, which attends every meeting, the county airport. They briefed us on the Sorrel departure path, and they have been doing that for the last 2 years, and will continue to do so as we now transition into the proposed RALS departure procedure, and this will occur sometime in late spring or early summer. As part of the ongoing update about operations of the airport, the city, the county, and JWA will be meeting with the Federal Aviation Administration on February 22nd, 2012. And for those of you who don't know, it's the FAA that controls the departures at the airport. This is another in a series of meetings with the FAA that the city has been able to facilitate. So not only have we strengthened ties with the Corps of Engineers, but also with the FAA over the past several years. Also at the meeting, JWA reported its latest operational statistics for 2011. The statistics disclosed that 8.6 million passengers were served at JWA for the calendar year 2011, and this is 2.2 million less than what's permitted by our settlement agreement. And based on information provided by the airport, it looks like this year we're on target for those similar statistics. The city the city advised those present that it has begun to move forward with discussions to extend the JWA settlement agreement, which expires in December 31, 2015. And if you want additional information on the airport, as always, go to the city website or contact our city manager's office. So, thank you.
Councilman Henn.
I have no reports.
Councilman Selich.
No reports.
Councilman Hill.
No reports.
Councilman Rosansky.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
The Finance Committee did meet yesterday. We received a preview of the quarterly financial report, which will be on a subsequent agenda. I will just simply say, to quote Mayor Gardner, everything's fine.
I have nothing. So now we'll go to our public hearings, and number 14.
Thank you, Mayor Gardner. While staff is getting set up with the PowerPoint presentation, I just wanted to indicate that the three public hearings are all general plan amendments having to do with changing general plan designations as it relates to non-residential properties that are currently in a residential general plan designation and accompanying zoning designation. So the first one, Assistant Planner Kay Sims will provide our presentation.
Different issues.
While Kay is getting ready, our first general plan amendment and zoning code amendment is for a property that's located at 1419 Superior Avenue. It's located very close to Hoag Hospital. Are you ready, Kay?
I believe so.
All righty.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. 1419 Superior Avenue is located on the west side of the intersection of Superior Avenue and Hospital Road, within an area designated for multiple residential uses. It's developed with a medical office building, originally constructed in 1957 under Orange County jurisdiction, and has been in continuous use as a medical office facility since that time. The update to the zoning code in October 2010 required that the existing medical uses on the property be abated, and approval to change the general plan land use element and zoning code designations from multiple residential to medical commercial office and office medical will allow the existing medical office building and uses to remain. As you can see here, most of the parking spaces for the uses on this site are located on two adjacent properties, here and along here, which are not part of the application request. At their December 8, 2011 meeting, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the amendments as requested,
And as part of their recommendation, Dr. Morgan has provided a signed covenant and agreement to hold the three properties as a single parcel and building site. And if council approves the requested amendments, the covenant will be recorded with the County of Orange prior to the second reading of the ordinance. Mr. Dennis O'Neill is here this evening to represent Dr. Morgan and answer any questions you might have. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Is there any questions of staff or any questions of Mr. O'Neill?
No, I don't have any questions. I met with Dr. Morgan several months ago and suggested that he come in and apply for the amendment here. His building as well as the next couple are kind of caught up in this 2006 general plan amendment and the subsequent change to the non-conforming status applicable to his property, and I think it's right that we correct that change in this case.
So are you making a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Second.
All right. Is there any public comment on this item?
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. As Director Brandt explained, this is one of 3 similar hearings you're holding tonight that have to do with this nonconformance problem. You've held more of these hearings before. I'm sure you're going to be holding more of them in the past. And there's many similar cases that have been solved in a less visible way by going to the city's hearing officer, who meets sometimes in the afternoon and gives extensions for bringing things into conformance with it. Each time one of these comes up, I kind of have it in my mind somewhere. Did we get the vision of what the city should be like so wrong in 2006? And are we going to have a new general plan? When is it coming along? Are we going to have the same vision come back and make these things non-conforming again? I tend personally to think if the decisions that you're making tonight are going to be overturned by another general plan that again says this should be residential in 15 or 20 years, it's a wasteful and expensive operation requiring both your time and the Planning Commission's time, and I think we were better served by the abatement extension process. The city hearing officer seems very liberal about offering people repeated 10-year extensions as long as what they're doing is not causing a problem for their neighbors. That process keeps the general plan intact for the future when redevelopment occurs, but it does not affect the existing uses as long as they're not offensive to the neighbors. It seems to me to be a better process, but thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Dennis O'Neill. I'm here representing Dr. Morgan, the owner of the subject property, and of course support Councilman Rosansky's motion to return the use of this property to medical, clinical uses, which has been the way the property's been used by Dr. Morgan for the last 35 years. And so we did talk about and review the possibility of asking for an abatement extension, but it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense when we have a property that's been used for medical, clinical purposes for so long. Dr. Morgan is here with me, and we're prepared to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I'd like to bring it back. Is there further discussion? Please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the resolution and ordinance titles. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving General Plan Amendment Number GP 2011-007 for property located at 1419 Superior Avenue, and ordinance number 2012-7, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving zoning code amendment number CA 2011-010 for property located at 1419 Superior Avenue. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
All right, item number 15.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is also, as I stated previously, another general plan and rezone request. And
I'm sorry.
Yes, good evening.
This is not public comment?
No, it's not a public comment. I'm number 15.
Oh, well, let us have ours.
Okay.
We'll call you up in a moment.
Okay.
we'll just go ahead and proceed with the staff presentation, and Associate Planner Jaime Maria will provide that.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is another property amendment. This property is located at 514 East Oceanfront, more specifically at the corner of East Oceanfront Boardwalk and Palm Street in Balboa Village. The property itself is developed with a mixed-use building that was constructed in 1948 and was significantly remodeled in 2003. The lower level of the building consists of 4 commercial suites, and the second level consists of 5 residential apartments. Unfortunately, as a result of the general plan and zoning code update in 2010, the property was redesignated for 2-unit residential use, rendering the existing mixed-use property non-conforming and subject to the city's abatement requirements. The property owner has no intentions of redeveloping the property for 2-unit residential and wishes to retain the existing use of the building for mixed-use purposes, and therefore they're requesting a general plan amendment to change and coastal land use plan amendment to change the designation of the property from 2-unit residential to mixed-use vertical, consistent with the existing use of the building and also consistent with neighboring properties along Palm Street and Balboa Boulevard. The property owner is also requesting a zoning amendment to change the property from 2-unit residential to mixed-use vertical. The Planning Commission reviewed the project at the January 19th Planning Commission hearing and unanimously voted to recommend approval of the request. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any question for staff? All right. Is there a motion?
I would move approval of the item.
Second.
Second. All right. We have public comment on this item.
I'm the applicant for SCAP 3, the owner. My name is Terry Jones. Just want to thank you for your consideration of this.
All right. Is there any other public comment on this item?
Good evening. W.R. Dilding. I live within the Balboa Village bid area of which this property is. We've had 4 problem properties. This is the next to last one to be taken care of. One of them tore down. The other 2, one of them is planning on building a duplex after 10 years, and the other one, having met with the family and the son, are planning a duplex 10 years from now, if timing is right. In reference to this, and my big concern is, these people contacted me several months ago when they got word that they had been rezoned. They live out of the area, I believe in Nevada, and digging into this problem, there was no notification to them. Now, when they put up their $11,000 for this amendment, of which they probably get some back because it's being charged by the hour, we, within the area and the local association, received public notices. The yellow card for tonight, the blue card for the public, or the Planning Commission hearing. That whole block, except for their lot, currently, up until the new zoning ordinance, when SP 8 was wiped out, they lost their commercial zoning with no notification. I don't think that's right, and I hope there's some consideration in, if staff can prove otherwise, that they were notified, fine. Otherwise, I think it's a mistake. It appears to me, looking at the general plan, when the R2, which has been there, they just continued it all the way down to Palm Street, and they should have stopped before they got to the last one. Now, there is a possibility that in tonight's packet before you, there is a opposition letter from a resident at the Rendezvous condominiums. They have complained that building has been there long before the Rendezvous was built, at the same time. I can remember the night the Rendezvous burned down. I helped lay hoses. And I'm sorry, I thought when they built this project, this was going to be second homes. But we know what happened to second homes in the economy down here. If you got something, becomes full-time as mine did upon retirement, or a rental unit. But I do support. I think they're entitled to it. Planning Department has done a good job overall. We do have one concern, which I'm not going to divulge at this time. Brought it up at the Planning Commission, but please carry on in consideration the fees that they've been charged.
Thank you. Other public comments on this items? Is there further discussion? Then please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the titles for the resolution and ordinance. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving amendments to the general plan and coastal land use plan for property located at 514 East Oceanfront. Ordinance number 2012-8, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving a zoning code amendment to change the zoning designation of property located at 514 East Oceanfront. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
Item 16.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the final general plan amendment and rezone for your consideration this evening. It's located on Bayshore Drive. Our Assistant Planner, Makana Nova, will give you a brief overview of the proposal. I am happy to report that we have just about completed all the review of the non-conforming properties, and there's just one final public hearing that will come before the City Council, and then we will have completed our review of all of these types of properties.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor, council members. My name is Makana Nova, Assistant Planner to the Planning Division. The Presta property amendments is a land use amendment to two properties which were developed as a single building site in 1960. The property to the south, 2888 Bayshore Drive, was developed with 39 dwelling units. The northerly parcel at 2890 Bayshore Drive was developed with accessory carports and several other accessory commercial uses, including a marine surveyor's office, leasing offices for the adjacent apartments, and also leasing offices for the boat slips. There is one dwelling unit above these commercial uses. Because of the commercial uses on the property, it is currently subject to abatement because it's located in a residential zoning district. As a result, the applicant has requested an amendment to the application to accommodate these commercial uses. They're currently requesting a mixed-use water-related, it's an MUW2 land use designation. As a result of that request, the property to the south requires a density change to accommodate the existing 39 dwelling units on the property. The property to the north would be limited to one dwelling unit under the mixed-use designation, and would also accommodate up to 10,000 square feet of commercial floor area per the FAR limitations under the general plan and the zoning code. Again, the property to the south, the density would be changed. The amendments have been reviewed for compliance with SB 18, the Native American noticing requirements, and also the Section 423 thresholds, which are not exceeded under this project. That concludes my presentation. Are there any questions at this time?
Yeah, I have a question. If we make this change, they can build another 10,000 square feet of commercial space or non-residential space, and that's a space they could not build. Could they build 10,000 square feet of something else if we didn't make this amendment? I mean, are we just giving them the ability to intensify with this amendment, or?
The amendment does allow for additional commercial floor area. There's about 1,500 square feet of floor area with the existing building, which consists of the dwelling unit and the offices. And then there's also another 5,000 square feet or so if you count the carports as floor area. So it does allow for maybe an additional 4,000 square feet of bulk from what's constructed on the property at this time.
And yet, when we look at it, that's not an increase in traffic, and if
It
they
does not
actually
ex-
build that,
It does not exceed the thresholds for the Section 423, but it does increase the traffic, for example. But it does not exceed the thresholds.
Right, but we've completed the appropriate analysis, and this general plan amendment does not exceed any thresholds as established by the Charter 423.
Right. And if we didn't approve this, then they would have to do something, they would have to change the whole.
If council were not to approve this general plan amendment and rezone, then the other option would be for a time extension that was where they can go to the hearing officer and request an extension on their abatement period. So instead of being 1 year, which was the original abatement period, it could be extended up to an additional 10 years.
In which case that they couldn't intensify the use?
No, they could not intensify because it would be a non-conforming development. So they could continue with their existing development and square footages and be able to maintain that use, but they wouldn't be able to expand it.
Okay. Councilwoman Daigle.
Yeah, what's the age of the structures on the property?
They were all originally developed in 1960.
In 1960s. So if we were to approve this, then they can plop a new structure on there and maintain that current state of construction?
They can, but again, the carports on the northerly parcel are required parking for the southerly parcel. So that would need to be accommodated in any redevelopment for the properties.
So as professional planners, how would you encourage the revitalization of this property versus grandfathering in really older structures? I mean, how would you do that?
It's my opinion that the general plan amendment does provide more flexibility for future revitalization of the project. By just extending the non-conforming abatement period, I think that it encourages minimal investment into the property because there is a shorter time frame on its return in terms of the investment. I think that the general plan amendment gives the ability for the property owner to significantly reinvest in the property and possibly restore, demolish or restore the buildings, given that now it is a conforming use.
Okay, so maybe you can repeat how you would view this as an incentive to redevelop this property.
Because the property would then become a would become a conforming use and development with the general plan and zoning. So that would allow them to reinvest into the property without a concern that they would have to abate or change the use or development of the property to conform to the general plan and zoning. So that does serve as a financial incentive because it removes the cloud of uncertainty in terms of what the city may do in the future in terms of bringing the property into conformance with the general plan and zoning.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I would move the motion, move the item.
Second.
All right, can we have public comment on this item?
I've got one
I'm
question.
sorry, Councilman Selich?
This item and the two previous items just kind of jogged my memory on something I've been wanting to ask. So in regard to the 2006 general plan, the state law requires that we update the general plan every 5 years. It's been 5 years and 3 months. What are we going to be doing about that? It's probably not a question you wanted to hear.
Councilmember Selich, that's a very good question, but I think that is more applicable to the housing element. The general time frame for the entire general plan is 10 years.
Oh, it's 10 years.
It's 10 years, sir.
Public comment, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. My name is Mike Hewitt. I represent the property owners in this matter, and we would just like to thank you for your consideration on this matter. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try and respond.
Are there any questions for Mr. Hewitt? All right.
Thank you.
Dan Purcell, Corona Del Mar. I attended the Planning Commission meeting where this was brought up, and I'd have to go back and review it. I wasn't expecting this type of a presentation. This wasn't presented this way at the Planning Commission, is my recollection, and the property owner was in here and spoke. Again, my recollection, this is all kind of on the fly, that this was going to be saved for the kids and all this stuff. Now, no changes were going to be made. And I think there were some representations that there wouldn't be any more massing and that the structure, it's hard to remember all this on the fly, but this doesn't sound anything like what I heard at the Planning Commission meeting. Sorry. Thank you.
perhaps my question set them off because I went in a different direction. It wasn't something that they brought forward, it was something that I brought out, so that may have changed the tenor of the conversation. Other public comment on this item? Did you have something you wanted to say?
I could just clarify, there is no development proposed, but the land use change, we're just discussing what the land use change could accommodate for future redevelopment.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other discussion from council? And please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the resolution and ordinance titles. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving General Plan Amendment Number GP 2011-008 and Coastal Land Use Plan Amendment Number LC 2011-004 for property located at 2888 and 2890 Bayshore Drive. Ordinance Number 2012-9, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving Zoning Code Amendment Number CA 2011-011 for properties located at 2888 and 2890 Bayshore Drive. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And now on to continued business number 17.
Madam
Yes.
Mayor, I must recuse myself because I own a home that's within 500 feet of PCH.
All right.
And I will also recuse myself as I own several properties within 500 feet of PCH.
All right. Go ahead and eat some more chocolate. No.
I need my buttons. Can I have my new chambers here? Don't touch. Yeah. Thank you, though.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Tonight we want to bring forward the relinquishment of Coast Highway and Newport Boulevard. This is the item that we started several years ago. I know there's a lot of detail in your report, so I created a little PowerPoint to help point out some of the facts, and then we can go through that real quick. We are talking about two items here. This is the Coast Highway relinquishment. It goes from the Santa Ana River to Jamboree Road, currently owned by Caltrans, and also Newport Boulevard from Finley Avenue, right out here at the signal, out to the harbor bridge deck. A little history for folks who haven't seen this. This started about back in 2008. It's going on 4 years now. Council gave us direction to start looking into relinquishment of these two facilities. 2009, Caltrans did their transportation system analysis report, which basically looks at the facilities and asks if they can be relinquished, and they found that both these facilities could. We had to do legislation through the legislator, and also the governor signed in October of 2009, which allows relinquishment if the parties continue with the process. And then Caltrans started what they call the Project Scope Summary Report, which is really looking at the facilities in depth and talking about the condition of the facilities and to some point evaluating what their facilities need and also what the value is that they feel would be appropriate to relinquish. This went on in September 2010. We actually had a chance to look at that draft report, and we had mentioned that before, that at that point they thought they would be looking at a zero value relinquishment to the city. We objected to that and felt that the value should be much higher and that the facilities need to be looked at and reassessed, and they went out and did that. It took them about another year, and in September 2011 they came back with their final draft report, which a copy is attached to your staff report tonight, and in that discusses what they found in their relinquishment. Again, this is also noted that this is to bring the facility up to a safe and drivable condition. That's an important point. When we did our original CDM relinquishment of Coast Highway, the condition at that point was to bring it up to good and safe repair. There is a difference between the two. One's a lot better, higher level. Now they're looking at the rules require that it just be safe, drivable condition. So bottom line is, we got through the report, if you had a chance to look through that. Both facilities, they're looking to offer us at $117,000 to take both facilities. They did break it up at our request. Coast Highway, they're valuing at $97,000. That, again, is from Santa Ana River to Jamboree Road. And Newport Boulevard would be $20,000 from Finley Avenue to the Channel Bridge.
Dave, I'd just like to clarify. I think there was a press article that left people, at least some people, with the impression that we were going to pay them these amounts of money to get the relinquishment. This is money that is being paid by the state to us, right?
This is correct. This
Yeah.
is their value of what they feel to bring it up to that safe and drivable condition, the value to be needed. And basically, these values come down to doing the ADA improvements on the facilities.
How much, do you remember how much they paid us for Corona Del Mar?
Oh, I do, and I'll give it to you in just a second. It's
Okay.
about 3-point-something million,
All right.
but, and I have a little comparison to help you with that.
Okay, thanks.
Starting with the benefits, though, we pursued this because there are some benefits to the city. There's a lot of restrictions Caltrans puts on its facilities, and some of those would no longer be applicable to us, particularly in the landscape area. It is a word of caution I put in here because when we do take, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide there. Let me catch you up here. It is still a 6 to 8 lane facility. It still has to abide by the Arterial Highway Master Plan, the Uniform Traffic Codes, the speed laws and things. So some of the things will always be bound to that Caltrans has, but there are things that we can eliminate and maybe help the process along. So that is definitely a benefit to us. And I think I skipped a slide, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back one because I did flip over one. The other thing is just having full control of the process and increase in flexibility of how we manage the process, how we control the permits, how we do special events and things. We do some of that now. We don't have as much control as we probably desire. Some of this stuff has to happen anyway. I know I've heard a lot about the construction that goes on Coast Highway. That would probably have to happen anyway. There's a lot of facilities that run through that, particularly Sanitation District and Edison and some of the other major lines. We would still, as a city, have to contend with that, but we have a little more ability to control the construction, i.e. we probably wouldn't be letting Edison do it in the middle of December going into the vote parade. But with that, we also have the ability to maybe coordinate the signals a little better. I checked with our traffic folks. They thought we could maybe do a 5% increase in overall travel time if we did something, if we own the signals. So, I'm sorry, decrease in travel time, increase getting across, I'm thinking across, decreasing time. So, and with that, what I did is I wanted to present this in a little better format because there are a lot of facts here. So I've generated a couple tables for you, and this has to do with the cash offer. And as you'll see up here on the screen, we have West Coast Highways on the top here, and this is what they're looking at, the Santa River, and this is their cash offer. It's $97,000. The length is 4.1 miles, and it comes out to about $23,500 per mile. If you look at Newport Boulevard below that from Finley to the bridge deck, it's about 0.17 miles, and it comes out a little higher at about $117,000 per mile. Now, this is in comparison down below. Back in 2004, we took the other portion of Coast Highway through Corona Del Mar, and that was 3.8 or 3.3 miles, and it averaged out to be a little higher than that at almost over $1 million per mile. So you can see the nature of the offer at these points. It's really low, and I think it has a lot to do with the state funding. We had a lot of discussions with Caltrans staff about this. There wasn't a lot of money overall for the whole state. So I think that it plays into what they're actually offering, along with the other change in the condition to a safe and drivable condition. If we go to the next slide here, this tells some of the other concerns that might pop out. This is the legal exposure, and I put a little table together on this. If you look at West Coast Highway here, you look, and this is per the report, they said over a 3-year period, they had 436 accidents on this, of which they had 5 fatalities and 224 injuries involved. Just doing the math again, this is an average of about 145 per year, and again, it comes out to be about 35 accidents per mile. And I put this just as general numbers to get a reference. Newport Boulevard down below here, we have the same statistics, and it comes out to be about 29 accidents per mile. The other thing about Newport I'll point out is they had 15 accidents reported, but there were no injuries and no fatalities. And I think a lot of them happened right here at Finley because my window faces out there, and for 4 years I've probably seen 10 people get slammed on that left turn there. So it's a little different operation, and that plays into our recommendations here.
Given, though, that we maintain the signals, is that correct?
We do not maintain the Caltrans signals.
Really? They do? Okay.
Yes.
And then what about the roadways, the pavement, everything?
They also maintain that.
Okay.
For comparison, I look down below here. I did a quick check, and this is for 2011. We pulled all our traffic accidents, and for the entire city and all our roadway network, we had 1,087. If you look at that, if we just considered those city miles, because we couldn't break them up per arterials and roadways, there was just too much and not enough time, but if I just took them on all our roadways, it's about 5 accidents per mile. If I took all those accidents and just stuck them all on the arterial system, which we have about 81 miles of it, you'd end up with about 13 accidents per mile. So if you look at that compared to the Coast Highway accident rate, it's a much broader extreme there, and that brings up a concern that we'd have to obviously consider if we took such a facility. So some facts there to take a look at. The next set we wanted to look at is kind of the maintenance costs. This was the other side that became interesting. If you look in the Caltrans report, they talk about a savings of $2.7 million per year over a 10-year period. That's this number right here. If you break that out on average annual cost, you're going to come up with about $270,000 they're saying they're going to save a year. That's a very low number if you're working with the bids and the things that we have to do. There's an average per mile that comes out about $62,000 per mile. We did the numbers on a 20-year estimate, and this includes replacing the signals. A signal nowadays costs about $220,000 per signal. Overlays cost about $1.80 per square foot. So you start calculating those numbers in, and we attach the estimate. We come up with about $33 million we're going to need to maintain that facility, just the West Coast Highway portion, over 20 years. Breaking that down on an average annual cost, you're going to see the differences. The $1.6 million versus their $270,000. I showed mine as a cost. They were, again, showing theirs as a savings. That's a big number difference, and that's one of our concerns and which led to our considerations here.
Dave, do you think that's a difference, though, in that we are going to do a gold standard maintenance and they are not? I mean, even if they continue to maintain, to hold them in their ownership, are we going to see a lesser, do you think because of budget concerns, a lesser level of maintenance from Caltrans?
I just looking at what they do out there, I don't think they surely maintain to the standards we do, but they do have to maintain a certain level. They're going to have to make sure their signals operate. They're going to have to make sure their pavement is safe. So it may not be on the same frequency we have. We may have to endure a couple more potholes and maybe kick in some money. But I think it'll be in a good condition. There are cases, in the case when I came from Huntington Beach, the city actually paid the beach boulevard because the state couldn't do it. So we took it upon ourselves, got federal money, and we always have that option to do things like that if we see it. Going a little further for comparison here, going down, and there's another thing on Newport Boulevard. The numbers are just a little different. It's a short segment, so the annual cost we expect is about $69,000. The other consideration in here, too, on this particular segment, we have the Bay Bridge over the Back Bay, and that's a big element. And we worked with Caltrans, and they came down and basically said, you have to take the whole segment. We can't take the bridge out. That bridge is about $21 million value today. I'm guessing you're probably 50, 60 years away from replacing, but when it comes due, it's going to be a big nut to crack. It was built in 1980, so figured that's maybe 75 years we're going to have to deal with that. So that's another consideration for this particular segment. So when we get into our thought process on recommendations, the downside of taking ownership of this is that Caltrans is offering an extremely small amount of cash, particularly compared to Corona Del Mar. And it may just be the economic times, it may be the way they do their relinquishment processes now. We would accept probably a disproportionately higher level of liability on this road compared to our other roadways. It is a very high-speed road, it's a lot of traffic, has a lot of truck traffic on it. And then the last is that basically the maintenance cost on this particular highway is going to be very high. It has a lot of vehicle traffic on it. It's about 55,000 cars per day. It's about 9% truck traffic. Typically on a freeway you have about 6%, and on our arterials we're probably running 2 or 3%. Trucks really beat up the road. It's a larger facility, so we're going to have that kind of cost. When we looked at all this, we really came up with the conclusion that it would probably make sense to take Newport Boulevard because it does offer some major benefits in the traffic circulation. There are 2 signals here at Findlay and Violito that we can work to help coordinate with our system and drain off the peninsula a lot sooner. They are really kind of a bottleneck for us. The segment is short. It's only 0.17 miles, and the cost is minimal. It's about an 80-foot right-of-way compared to an average of about 160, I believe, for Coast Highway. So it's a smaller facility. It has a little higher traffic, but it's probably a better bet to take. They also offer us more per mile, if you remember back to our slide on that. So.
And this stops short of the bridge, so we're not taking responsibility for the bridge.
We would not take the bridge deck. On the other hand, looking at Coast Highway, it just made no sense from a business standpoint, look from staff going, I don't know why we'd want to do that at this level of dollars. There may be a lot of reasons, and again, that's for discussion tonight, but it was very expensive to maintain it. It had a liability cost that came with it. But I also pointed out on this last slide here, there's a couple things. We can still, if we do not take this highway, we can do enhanced vehicle capacities. We have the ability to go through OCT. In fact, we have an application in now to add a 3rd lane and a bike lane underneath the Newport Boulevard going westbound. So we can bring regional dollars to the facilities as long as Caltrans cooperates, and they have been doing that with us. we can do bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and we can also work with signal coordination. In fact, we have a meeting coming up with the coastal cities to talk about maybe working on a project together with OCTA to maybe try to coordinate all the signals up and down the coast. Maybe OCTA's and the city's money putting in a fiber optic system that the state would run, but we'd get those enhancements. The big one probably is the enhanced landscaping and parkway improvements, and I know that's kind of a stumbling block. We just went through West Newport and looking to do some improvements there. We may have some challenges there. Done a little research on it. I think we can work with them. The big part is the legal side of it about their concerns with accidents and fixed structures. I looked on some retaining walls they did recently. They've done some decorative walls that we might be able to use towards the bridge that we're looking at doing. And there are some great cases as we talked recently with them and as they left town. I said, make sure you look at Newport Boulevard as you go through Costa Mesa and those big Canary Island palms that you have in there and those big pear trees in the middle that are way over your standards, and we would be looking to try to do that. The last I thought about that is in my days at Huntington Beach, if you go through Beach Boulevard, we planted that, and those palm trees are pretty good caliber right now. So there is ability to add some girth to the highway, but probably not to the level that we might have discussed. So that was kind of the concerns, but I do think there's a hope of light there. So with that, that's our recommendations, and we'd really like council's thoughts on that.
Councilman Stellich?
Well, as they say, this is deja vu all over again. You know, your recommendations and your arguments are very similar to what the group in Corona Del Mar, which I was part of, was faced with when we tried to get Coast Highway relinquished through Corona Del Mar. In fact, almost looks like you used the same PowerPoint in some instances. And the difference was that there was a very strong constituency group of people in Corona Del Mar that fought and pushed and really put the pressure on the city council at that time to assume Coast Highway going through Corona Del Mar because it was something that was considered to be a very important part of that community. I think the difference we have here is that we've kind of got two communities going. We've got Mariners Mile and we've got the West Newport community. We just went through a very extensive effort with the Citizens Advisory Panel in West Newport, and that's the segment from the Coast Highway Bridge to the Santa Ana River, to come up with some landscaping plans, some improvements for the intersection at Superior and Balboa on Coast Highway, coming across the river from Huntington Beach. And Dave, in spite of what you're saying, I can tell you that a lot of those things are not going to survive going through Caltrans. And I think we raised a lot of folks' expectations as far as what we're going to do, and now we're talking about abandoning that effort. And I personally would not want to see that happen. I don't think that the deal you presented is the best deal, but I don't know that we've looked at all the options. In Corona Del Mar, Caltrans was stonewalling us and giving us bad options, and we went to John Campbell's office and got special legislation passed to get the kind of deal that we thought we could live with. I think there's a number of options that we can pursue here. Maybe we break it down into two segments. The West Coast Highway segment between the river and the bridge is one segment and deal with Mariners Mile later. Or maybe we find a way to excise out the Bay Bridge. I mean, I certainly realize that that's a big problem and something that would be a huge burden for the city to take. But, you know, maybe it's the point where we need to get these legislators that we have that are representing us in Sacramento to help get through the Caltrans regional obstacles that we continually face in dealing with these issues and try and get something that works for our city. But I would certainly hate to see us give up on our efforts in this. I think maybe we need to go back and regroup and take a look at some different strategies. Go ahead and move ahead on the Newport Boulevard segment, but really continue on the Coast Highway segment, with the emphasis right now being on finding a way to get the section between the Coast Highway Bridge and the Santa Ana River, because we've gone through a lot of work. We've spent a lot of money on those plans. We've raised a lot of expectations on people. A lot of people came to those meetings, put a lot of work into it, and to go and accept a situation where we're not going to be able to meet the expectations that we set for these folks, I think, is not right.
Councilman Henn?
Is there a time limit on the legislative authorization here for the relinquishment of this?
I don't know that. I'm sure it's relatively new. It's 2009, so it's got to have some legs to it.
Well, I think what you have to do, Councilman Henn, is you probably have to get another piece of legislation passed, and The last time we did it as a rider on another bill. But get something passed. I mean, what happened was John Campbell got there, and I went to Sacramento, so I was part of the meetings, and we met with the people up at the state, and his staff came in, and we worked out a situation that worked for us. And, you know, I don't know everything that we've done here, but just from reading the staff report and the presentation tonight, it just almost seems that maybe that's the kind of a step we need to take here in order to get this to be reasonable. I mean, the state is absolutely nuts to be offering us so little money for getting rid of such a high maintenance cost, and maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe we can spread the payments out over years or something if the state doesn't have the money now. I don't know that we've explored all these options. I think we need to, we need to take a longer look at it. Like I said, we've raised a lot of expectations in this community, and to walk away from it now would be a big mistake.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, I think Councilmember Selich probably said it best when he said the state's probably nuts.
Yeah.
Normally, I would be very supportive of these highway relinquishments, but I think staff has done a good job here in outlining why this particular deal on the table is not a good deal. I would agree with moving forward with Newport Boulevard. And I think Councilman Selich is right. We need to find a better deal if we want to move forward on Coast Highway. So I would not pursue it now, but I would pursue whatever legislative opportunities we have to increase the relinquishment price that would be paid by Caltrans to make this more attractive. I do see, as staff has outlined, that we still have the opportunity to make enhancements for both landscaping and for signalization and for traffic safety on these highways, irrespective of whether we acquire the properties, I understand it from the presentation. And I think we should continue to do that. I agree with Councilman Selich that it would be a real shame to raise the expectations and then not be able to move forward on our neighborhood revitalization programs throughout the city. But as I understand the staff presentation, we can still do that. It just may be more difficult because we're dealing with Caltrans on the Caltrans facility. And I think, frankly, legislation is going to be a tough slog given the state's budget situation. But I would recommend proceeding that way.
I have hesitations also because it is. I mean, if those figures are right, of some $20 million or something, I don't remember exactly the word, maintenance, we've got so many things. I mean, the whole Tidelands thing, all these millions of dollars of projects we have. This is something where we wouldn't have to. We may not be able to get exactly the plans we want, but we can work with them. And to take on that when we have all these other demands on our finances down the road, seems to me maybe this is something that we could pass on. And I also, you said that there was and I wasn't really active at the time, but you were, a real push in Corona Del Mar, and I haven't seen any surge of people demanding that we do this. I mean, certainly that's fine, but I don't know if they saw the figures, whether that's what changed it, but I didn't get a whole bunch of emails saying, gee, please support this. So, as a councilman,
I did receive a few emails in that respect, but I have to wonder if the portion of Coast Highway west of the Arches Bridge has a lot different profile for traffic and maintenance than the portion east of the Arches Bridge, because you know, I do see some sanitation district work out there, but I have to believe the traffic accident incidents, for example, is a lot lower on that segment of the road. I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see it, maybe if we can, parse it a little better, and rather than just completely defer the activity, see if there isn't a strategy for the west segment of this where we really do have a city beautification benefit, gateway benefit to the city in that section. So I guess I would support continuing the effort there on the west segment as opposed to the eastern segment.
before I open to public comment, but I'm getting a general sense, and we may want to bifurcate this, but that there is certainly support for the Finley Avenue. Everybody seems to be in agreement there. But we do have some diversion, and we might want to rephrase that as to the rest of it, and we can come back to that. But let's open it for public comment now. Is there public comment on this item? Hi, Mr. Mosher.
Mayor Gardner, my name is Jim Mosher. I wanted to thank you for trying to get clarification about what I guess is called the Channel Bridge the one up here on Newport Boulevard and exactly what we're doing here. My confusion is the graphic that's in the staff report seems to show shaded the entire span that goes over the channel. And so I'm hoping you can ask for some clarification as to exactly what part of, where the relinquishment ends, what this phrase means to the bridge deck. Because obviously it's not the part of the bridge that spans over Coast Highway, but the part over the water seems to be shaded, so I don't know quite what we're taking on here. This is the graphic in the staff report. There's a big black line for PCH, and then Newport Avenue is shaded, and I assume the shaded part is the part that's going to be relinquished. And it clearly seems to be showing the part over the water being shaded, so I'm confused by that.
If I can clarify, I do see the graphic you're talking about, and our drafter went a little too far in that. He went to the stop short on the interchange. So that does just go up to the bridge deck that goes over the Newport Channel here on Newport Boulevard. It does not include the bridge over the channel.
In layman's language, it is the level part of the road, and it doesn't include any of the elevated part.
The layman's is you drive out and you see the asphalt stop and the concrete bridge start.
Mm-hmm.
That would be where the dividing line is. The bridge would not be included in it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment?
I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Daigle.
I would imagine with this relinquishment that there's certain rules of the road as far as how it works. Does it address segmentation? I mean, can a city say, look, we want this piece but not that piece? I mean, how does Caltrans, I mean, is there a minimum criteria, half mile, 2 miles? I mean, there must be some logic to how they do those things.
I can answer that because I've been through it. They'll want to get as much as possible. They'll want from Jamboree to the river. But again, that's why we went to Sacramento. We negotiated. I mean, originally they wanted to take a much longer stretch than just what we wanted through Corona Del Mar. We wanted a shorter stretch, and we ended up with the compromise where we went down to Newport Coast Drive.
So conceivably, a legislative advocate representing people could have a different view than an agency and would seek to obtain legislation that would better represent the people.
I think that's a true case. You could probably find somebody who could better represent that, maybe find additional dollars that Caltrans could bring to the table, and also show that they could parcelize the area. We, as Councilmember Selich have seen, he's had this. That was the stance we got, and they were really strong about we're not going to break this into little sections because they need significant enough. They don't want pieces left of Coast Highway. So we haven't gone to the Sacramento route to start going that route yet. Maybe we can have more fruit there. There are many other options we can explore, and I tried to bring that out a little bit. For instance, I was just recently talking about what about some kind of agreement where we would take the liability for enhanced landscape, and you maintain the road, but we just take your fear away, which is the liability for hitting something. I think the staff's open to it. If we can get through the state attorneys, that would be something, but that might give us a vehicle to enhance the landscaping, but yet not take the maintenance on for the asphalt and the concrete.
What do you think would get a better outcome for the community, you know, hearing what people are looking for? You know, would it be continuing negotiations with the agency, or would it be the path of some sort of a specialized legislation?
My gut feeling is we met with the deputy director, and he was speaking for Cindy Kwan, the director himself, and also said he spoke for Sacramento. A lot of this terms come out of there. So we're probably going to have to go beyond the department. The Department of Transportation is limited on what they can offer. It might have to be a legislative action. And again, one of my recommendations is maybe we just take Newport and postpone and we'll keep working on Coast Highway until we get either a better financial environment to work within or the conditions that are acceptable to council.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, Mayor, I think you put your finger on where I think this issue is, so I would offer a motion that we proceed with the acquisition of Newport Boulevard and that we postpone our existing relinquishment efforts with Caltrans and direct staff to identify additional strategies that may include legislation, that may include making improvements absent the acquisition of the property, or may include as you just described, various strategies related to the division of liability for the various improvements going forward, and come back to the council with alternative strategies.
Yeah, particularly focused on that west segment where we really have resident enthusiasm and a real opportunity to improve the gateway to the city.
All right.
I'm a simple boy. I didn't understand your motion.
I think it's everything you said, Ed.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure that it leaves it open, that we can continue to at least pursue the coast highway from the bridge to the Santa Ana River.
The new clean sheet of paper.
Okay.
Just not on this deal.
All right. Was there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
All right. Any further comments, discussion? Please vote.
Let me ask, but staff feel like we have direction on that? Or you have any question in your mind as to what?
I guess you're saying we should pursue legislation?
Well, I'll come back to the council with options, including the ones that Dave suggested, landscaping within the existing parameters, some assumption of liability, focusing on the west side from the bridge on over, and an examination of the legislative options. Does that sound about right? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Please vote.
Councilmember Henry, you need to vote. Oh, there we go. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, do we do this now? Aaron?
I think we do the next item.
Okay.
Is there another item next change?
All right. Item number 18. Ollie outs in.
So this is an item that involves at least 3 different departments. I'm going to let Laura lead off on that, and we'll chime in as we go through it. Oh yeah, we're missing some council members.
Yeah.
I thought that Leslie was sending them in. Here they come.
I'm Laura Detweiler, Recreation and Senior Services Director. I have the A team with me here tonight, Principal Planner Jim Campbell, also Deputy City Attorney Kyle Rowan, and Recreation Superintendent Sean Levin. They're my Valentines for tonight, so I appreciate them being here. So this item is requesting your review of Chapter 1104, which pertains to rules and regulations for parks, facilities, and beaches. We are requesting multiple amendments to Chapter 1104 and also requesting that you repeal Chapter 1108 pertaining to smoking on beaches to avoid redundancy in the code, as we're now incorporating that language in 1104. As you're aware, Recreation and Senior Services manages the scheduling of parks and beaches. We are requesting these changes to ensure the public's enjoyment and safety of the public facilities they're using, also while trying to maximize facility uses and maintaining them at the highest standards that our community demands, and then also providing greater clarity in the code. This item came before both the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission and the Council in 2011. Since we last spoke to you about it, we have incorporated Council's request for refinement of language to prohibited conduct, specifically in the area of smoking buffer zones, abandoned bicycles, and permit requirements. And I do want to point out here that we're not changing procedures as it relates to permits or contract use agreements. We're simply adding additional language to clarify. The city's had long-standing processes in place for many decades, and we simply are asking to clarify so we are better able to react to complaints that we get from the community as it relates to noise issues, parking issues, and limiting their access to public facilities. To summarize the changes for you, we are including some general language cleanup. We've also got some new definitions included, specifically beaches, instructional activity, where fees are being collected for those instructions, and smoking. We've also defined a process for dealing with abandoned bicycles, and also designating a time frame in which we determine those bicycles have been abandoned. I'll share with you that where we see this issue arise is on the peninsula, where bikes have been chained and left for long periods of time, most likely on fences, which limits our access to get into some of the areas along the beachfront. And then also adding some language that allows us to deal with unsafe activities or nuisances in both parks and on beaches. We also want to bring to your attention tonight 3 areas along the peninsula as it relates to the 100-foot no smoking buffer. Our thought process behind this was there may or may not be concerns related to the businesses where this buffer fronts their storefront. And so we sent out 29 notices total, and those went to the landowners and the businesses that fall within that property. We only received 1 phone call, and it was the property owner where Charlie's Chili currently sits, and they were just wanting to clarify the changes and also ask the question, whose responsibility would it be to enforce that 100-foot buffer outside of their business? You'll see the green area is the beach. The orange area is where the buffer extends. We've identified some of the businesses along here just to orientate you with where we are at. The numbers that are highlighted are the businesses that actually have a part of the buffer zone meet up with their storefront, which on this particular slide is Pipeline, Charlie's Chili, and then down at the bottom here it's Newport Beach Hotel, and it just brushes by the front of their hotel. The second slide is 15th Street, and this is the Stuffed Surfer. And then the third slide, this is the Balboa Pier. There's quite a few more businesses in this area. Cabo Cantina, Castaway Casuals, BJ's Pizza, Balboa Inn, Bella Luna Cafe, and Tacos Cancun. And we did not hear from either of those businesses. We did let them know that they were welcome to call us if they needed further clarification or to attend the council meeting this evening. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to the city manager, and he's going to discuss the last couple of slides for you.
Thanks, Laura. As I said in an email to the insider's guide that I do, that I don't know if this is the worst idea ever or the best idea ever, and I'll certainly defer to the council and the public on that. I think one of my biggest concerns about this ordinance, while being a non-smoker myself and someone who hates smoking probably as much as, especially secondhand smoke, as much as almost anybody in the room, is just the enforcement. Remember, a law is only as good as our ability to enforce it. And one of the areas we have the most problem with is kind of the slide that Laura just showed, but think of it as 15th and 16th Street here. And this is where 2 different meetings, one associated with Alcoholics Anonymous, the other associated with Narcotics Anonymous, have met. The AA one has been meeting there for about 30 years. And what's happened as the recovery approach has changed is you got a lot of old timers there going to those meetings, and you got some new folks who are vanned in from some of the recovery homes, not necessarily in our community, but in other communities, and a lot of them smoke. And they will gather there, in many cases illegally, and smoke on the oceanfront walk or on the beach. And I'm the one that gets the complaints mostly for lack of enforcement, because our park patrol struggles with it. That's an intimidating thing to do, to approach a group of people that are smoking. The police department is less intimidated because they have badges and guns. And but it's still something that if they've got a call elsewhere, they're going to be running elsewhere to do that. So I can just sense that with this change, especially the 100-foot buffer zone. I'm going to jump back a slide. 2 slides. You can see where this is that same area, and you can see where the buffer zone pushes those smokers right in front of, among other things, Fry's Market, and right around the church there. And I can just see that I'm going to get the same amount of complaints and the same amount of dissatisfaction. So, because nobody's happy if the enforcement isn't appropriate and the secondhand smoke is still there. So what I talked about was putting the onus on the recovery organizers to say, you know what, we will allow you a small circle near your meetings where people can smoke on the beach. And they can only do so in a designated area during specific times. And if you look at what that might be, it would be roughly 5 to 6 hours a week. So Saturday morning, Sunday morning, if this were approved. And they'd be responsible for cleaning it up, for monitoring that the folks who go to those meetings don't smoke elsewhere, and help in this enforcement effort, which I worry so much about. And to me, the bottom line is that this would expose fewer people to secondhand smoke, because you'd get those smokers who are right now near where everyone is running or walking on Oceanfront Walk, and you'd move them out to an area where there are more people who seem to be more accepting of smoke. And it does, I showed the con on this chart, it does, this is not for the purists. This allows smoking on the beach. But I'm proposed it that you guys might consider allowing it as a pilot program. It would go away after a period of time, and if it, at that time, I'd either come back to you and say it worked or it didn't work and ask for either a continuance or ending it, just to try it out to see if we can indeed expose fewer people to secondhand smoke and deal with what I see as a looming enforcement issue here. So that's the summary of one section of this proposal, and it's that section that involves the city manager's ability to permit certain groups to do this. And again, I understand it's blasphemy to many. It's blasphemy to me personally in some cases, but I do see it as a pragmatic solution, and if you don't like it, that's okay. We'll deal with that.
What about other groups that would come to you and say, you know, we meet on the beach and we would like the ability to smoke?
Well, it has to be a regular meeting, and I don't know that, I'd be real surprised if anybody else came to me on that. And you could arguably cap it at 2 and say only 2 permits shall ever be issued this way. Because I have that concern too, but I really don't see it occurring in real life.
I don't know. Is the Gulf Stream going to transfer, Steve?
Personally, I mean, if you're asking me my opinion on this, I'm supportive of the motion, but I'm not supportive of the carve-out. So I think we have a policy. You know, I appreciate the fact that there are people in recovery and they're trying to help themselves, and, you know, but that doesn't mean that they should have a special carve-out. So, you know, I supported the no smoking on the beach years ago, and I think it's generally been successful. I realize that it's an enforcement issue, and always will be. And if we give them the circle, they'll be outside of the circle. And so then the people will be complaining, well, how come you're not enforcing the circle? So I just assume to have it black and white. Plus, there's other people that'll see them smoking there and figure, well, okay, now it's okay to smoke here. So it's like, I think we had the same issue with the dogs on the beach. You know, we have it this time or that time, and people were arguing, well, you know, it's confusing and this and that. Well, it is confusing, and so I'm not in favor of allowing a carve-out in this situation.
Any other comments before we open?
My question actually has to do with those use permits. Can you provide additional background on how these use permits are administered today and what your proposed changes are here?
Are you referring to contract instruction?
Yeah,
use
so someone
agreements?
has a trainer on the beach, how that's treated today, and what enhancements you're seeking through this.
We're not changing the process. We have, at any given time, anywhere from 200 to 300 contract instructors that we enter into use agreements with. And a percentage of revenues that are brought in goes to the instructor, while the other part of the percentage comes back to the city to help pay for overhead.
Okay, now I know something the Recreation Department has seemed to be seeking for some time is how to address issues where someone is using a park, they have a client. How is that being addressed?
Yeah, and we did discuss that. I knew that was a concern of the council at the last meeting, and our opinion is that we need to treat it consistently across the board, whether it's 1 or 2 people being trained by a physical trainer or it's 10 people in a class. That's commercialization of our public facilities, and where it may not be an issue at a park more inland, if you take that same example and you're down at Corona Del Mar State Beach and you've got a physical fitness trainer who's got 5 students in their class and they're clogging up the steps to go up and down to the beach, there's quite a bit of noise associated with it. So we have complaints coming in from the residents, whereas, you know, at a park that there's much more open space, we might not get a complaint.
Okay. My concern isn't mitigating the impacts. It's any arbitrary setting of fees, and how does that work? Okay. You see somebody in training, and you have a confrontation with them, and then where does it go from there?
Right. We actually have a standardized process, a matrix, if you will, that guides us through that process when we sit down and negotiate with contract instructors. And there's a lot of things that we take into consideration. One being, where is it at? Is it outside in a park, or is it inside a facility? Is there a tremendous amount of staff time related to setting up, say, like a gymnastics class where it takes 2 of our employees a good hour to set up and break down? They're there to keep the building open at night. So we take those types of things into consideration, as well as trying to keep costs down for our participants, but also making it beneficial to the instructor to be there as well.
Okay, the scenario, I suppose, someone's working out on the beach with a trainer, because I've gotten these complaints, and the city wants essentially a cut of what the client is giving the trainer. I mean, how do you establish what is the city's percentage?
Right. It's interesting, after we had this conversation we had a couple of trainers come forward and work with us, and they actually were very pleased with the process that we had in place. They were excited about their business being advertised in every home in Newport Beach 4 times a year. And if they choose not to be in the Navigator and they solely just want to do some individual training, we'd work through that percentage ratio with them. We have, in general, on an average, it's normally a 65-35 split. We have some cases where it's 85-15% split, where student to instructor ratios need to be held very low, and we want to make sure that it's beneficial for both parties interested in that activity.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
Thank you. Laurel, last time we had some language that wasn't quite tightened up a little bit about use of facilities for which we charge a fee, and so I just want to be absolutely clear. It looks like we've tightened that language up. So if a parent and their child go down to one of our baseball fields and they're going to play catch or they're going to play pepper or whatever it is in the afternoon when the field is otherwise not occupied, they're not subject to being assessed any kind of fee or fine. Is that accurate?
Absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right, is there any other comment right now from council? All right, I'm sure there's some public comment on this issue.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is George Schroeder, and I would like to speak to the item. It's under the prohibitions. It's on page 5, and it's Part D. And it reads, prohibited to play basketball on any outdoor public basketball court within 300 feet of any residential zone parcel between sunset and or 7 o'clock p.m., whichever is later, and 8 a.m. Okay, well, the park I'm most concerned about is 38th Street Park. The homes there, they're not 280 feet. They're not within 300 feet. They're actually about 50 feet or less away. There's a full basketball court there. And I just think it's confusing, as Councilman Rosansky just said. It should be like black or white. Okay, the basketball courts should close at 7 o'clock. You should remove the words R7, whichever occurs later. Okay, and I live 2 or 3 blocks from there. It doesn't impact me, but I do walk my dog through there, and it is a full basketball court, and you do get adults playing, and if it goes until, the 6 or 8 weeks a year where it's like 8 or 8:30 at night, to be that close to a person's front door or the front patio, it's just unreasonable. That park was first built as a saltwater swim pool. If Judge Gardner was here, I'm sure he could verify that's correct. So anyway, so that's my suggestion, just that you give it, make it clear and not confusing, just that it closes at 7 o'clock.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Mayor. Sorry, my voice is a little off this evening. Mayor and council members. I share in...
Can you have your name?
My name is Joel Stone. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And just to give context to my comments, I am one of those residents that lives just a street width away from the 38th Street Park basketball courts. And I am aware of some of the issues over the last 20 years where I've lived there. some of the difficulties that I've encountered, especially now that I'm married and have 2 small children and have some issues with some of the goings-on at the park. I did notice and was given a copy of the proposed amendments to this section. I thought this might be the perfect opportunity for me to address one of the sections that was just outlined that I think might help in many respects. As has been outlined, the opening time for the court is 8 a.m. I think that clear opening time takes into account the balance of the uses of the park. A clear recreational use, it's a fantastic resource where people can play basketball at the beach, have a great time, and I see that, and it's fantastic. But it also takes into account people quietly enjoying their homes in the morning, getting up, smelling the coffee, having breakfast, playing with the children, getting them ready before they go to school, before the bouncing of the balls and the shouting begins. The closing time, however, isn't that same fixed time, and I don't believe it's an appropriate way to administrate the closure of the court from a couple perspectives. One, people's conduct throughout the year as a resident there remains very much the same. Getting up, going to work, coming home in the evening, relaxing, playing with the kids, bedtime stories, baths, dinner, whatever. The current closure time, legally, if we define sunset as the time the sun dips below the horizon, which I don't believe is defined in the code, the legal use of the park ranges anywhere from 7 p.m. in the evening, the closure, to maybe 8 p.m. In the evening. However, I think most players, when they're considering when they have to go home, and you tell them that the court closes at 7 or sunset, whichever is later, they might get a glossed-over eye look, and they're going to say, huh? And they're going to play till somebody tells them to stop. And unfortunately, that ends up being me or the Newport Beach Police Department. And I don't think it's fair to them, really, to not have a clear time. So, firstly, I think a fixed closing time, 7 p.m., would give fair notice to basketball players. It would give them a reasonable time to play during the day, 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. It gives residents appropriate expectations about what they can expect in terms of enjoying their evenings. And also, as mentioned, a law is only as good as its enforcement capability. I think it's really hard for Newport PD or the Park Patrol in particular to know how to go about approaching somebody at a given time during the year when they get a complaint regarding after-hours play at the court. I think it would do the police department or the Park Patrol a big favor to know that if somebody's playing after 7, they can approach them and confidently say, hey, did you see the sign? You know, we've got residents here. The courts are closed at 7. We appreciate your compliance. And I think everybody gets along peacefully. I think that the interests of the recreational use of the courts respected, and I think the interest of the peaceful enjoyment of people's homes in the area also gets respected. So I would really encourage the council to consider further amending subsection D. It can be accomplished by the striking of 5 words and a comma. The language of sunset or could be stricken, and then further language, whichever is later, and the comma thereafter. Those 5 words and that comma stricken from that paragraph achieves the purpose, and I don't believe there would be any significant problems with that. I appreciate the council's consideration.
Thank you. Is there other public comment on this item?
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I don't quite know how to start on this. First, I have to question the staff's standard boilerplate conclusion in the staff report that the passage of this ordinance will have no foreseeable effect on the environment. I must have missed something, but I thought the purpose of banning the smoking was primarily to cause an improvement in our environment. Second, despite the claims of language cleanup, this seems to me largely like rather poorly written code, which we are making even poorer. As an example, we already have a separate chapter in our municipal code that regulates beaches, and we're grafting on here new and very similar regulations as to what we have in that section about beaches in this section. You look here for when parks close, even though it says beaches at the top, you look somewhere else in our code to find when beaches close. And as for the parks, I thought I knew what a park was before I came here or read this, but I would defy anyone to explain what a park is as defined in the definition section of this chapter. The definition is about as clear to me as what we mean by weaning chickens. What this tells me is if we need a citizens advisory board to review special events, then we have an even greater need for a citizens advisory commission to review municipal code amendments to check that this stuff makes sense to the average person before it comes here to the council. I have specific concerns about the new section 1104-090 added about abandoned bicycles. Although this, again, at the top says it's a chapter about parks and beaches, that new section could arguably be read to say that it applies to a bike attached to any public property anywhere in the city. I have no idea if that is the intent of the language, or even from the description of the process, whether a bike has to be continuously attached at the same place or just in the same general place, or what it's trying to accomplish. There are legitimate reasons for leaving a bike in a particular place for extended periods of time. I myself have taken my bicycle to the John Wayne Airport, parked it in the parking garage, attached to public property, county property there, come back after a week, and I would be surprised to find the county sheriff confiscating my bicycle. If I understand our own municipal code, in most of the city, one is allowed to park a car for 72 hours without any question. And now we're somehow, for reasons I don't totally understand, being more aggressive about confiscating bicycles. I really don't understand why we're doing that, and I don't understand much of this code. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Laura Curran. I live in Corona Del Mar. So talking about this ordinance, first, let's talk about a bit of history. In, I think, 2004, the Newport Harbor High School students with Earth Resources Foundation were concerned about smoking on the beach, and they did a lot of research, and council, as a result, passed an ordinance restricting smoking on the beach. And it was pretty successful and widely hailed for that effect. So in 2009, 2010, EQAC looked at environmental quality issues and public health and the impact of secondhand and third-hand smoke of people at the beach. And they looked at city ordinances such as Laguna Beach and American Cancer Society research, and they did a lot of the recommendations that resulted in this proposed code. So there's that background. So now we have an ordinance which proposes a bigger 100-foot buffer, which is positive if you are concerned about secondhand smoke. Though I do have concerns because the buffers are only in the peninsula. I would like to know what the buffer would be in Corona Del Mar and if Crystal Cove State Beach would be affected. Then we have 11.04.30, which says the use of a public park or facility for group activities shall not interfere with public enjoyment, detract from the health, safety, or of the general public, cause unusual expense to the city. But in 11.04.080, it proposes, as Mr. Kiff said, to allow the city manager to designate a smoking area for regular activities and calls out recovery meetings held on 15th Street, for example. So I'm trying to get this straight. We're proposing a buffer, and we haven't been able to enforce it, but now we're proposing a dedicated space. And this could lead to things counter to 1.04.30, such as enforced expense to enforce, expense for receptacles. This is convoluted. If I'm walking on the beach, I can't smoke according to the ordinance, but I really wouldn't need to because I could walk up near that group in that circle, and from 100 feet away, I'd probably get enough smoke fumes to last me for quite a while. So in any case, this would detract from public safety and reduce recreation opportunities. And then we do have the question of what defines a group for the case of a permit. So, you know, I think when I think about this, if you ask the robber, why did he rob banks? It's because that's where the money is. Well, today I asked my local barista, you know, I said, hey, I'm going to be at City Council on Valentine's Day because of this smoking proposal about groups. And she said, well, you know, when I go to my group meeting, in Laguna Beach, we can't smoke on the beach because in Laguna Beach, they give us all tickets if we smoke on the beach. So what this says to me is that the people in the recovery groups or other groups can clearly discriminate between where they're allowed to smoke and where they're not. And so, meanwhile, if we had this group, this group area, the public's opportunity to recreate and breathe fresh air would be curtailed. So, again, clearly, let's go back to a tried and true KISS principle, which somebody talked about. It's called Keep It Simple, Sam. First of all, if you have 20 people smoking on the beach, just like on an airplane smoking section that we all remember, everyone else is going to experience that smoke. So let's create a simple rule that we can all understand and enforce, keep a 100-foot buffer, and keep our parks enjoyable for everyone, and keep the promise that the council made to the students in the high school so many years ago, and to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this?
Denise Oberman, resident of Newport Beach and homeowner resident on the Balboa Peninsula. I want to thank the council and staff for looking at an enhanced ordinance to protect the environmental quality and the public health of people that live at and wish to enjoy the beach and park areas. I share that I think the 100-foot buffer zone is an improvement. I think there are always going to be issues, but a properly communicated and enforced and straightforward ordinance with signage should create significant improvements in our coastal area. Proposing that the city manager make an exception is really a nonsensical proposal. And when I first came and provided testimony about the smoking ordinance, I did so not with direction of any particular group, but because I feel that it is a principle and a policy that should be administered with an even hand and across the board, not directed at any particular group. Having said that, the groups that Mr. Kiv proposes to entitle, they're disrespectful and have exhibited for years the disrespect for both the letter and the spirit of the existing ordinances regulating smoking at the beach area. I'm just going to share a scenario for you which has occurred over years. This is the reality, the physical reality of that situation. Every Sunday morning, I run on the beach. And after I go running on the beach, I go to collect an 82-year-old woman who happens to be a neighbor of mine to go walking along the boardwalk. Every week, we have to walk through a cloud of smoke in the 15th Street area with litter of cigarette butts on the sand, on the boardwalk, on the street, and the adjoining sidewalk. This is primarily coming from, on Sundays, the meeting that is held specifically at 15th Street. And I don't care what kind of meeting it is. I'm just going to characterize it as a large meeting. There are typically over 50 people on a regular weekly basis that attend the meeting on Sunday, slightly less on Saturday. And for the clarity and accuracy of the record, the Saturday meeting is at 14th Street, which is right on top of Newport Elementary School. So those meetings, going back to the meetings at 15th Street, are at least 50 people, and on sunny seasons and sunny days, as many as 80 people. There are typically between 8 and as many as 20 individuals sitting on the boardwalk, along the boardwalk, on the benches that are on the boardwalk, and walking to and from the sand to the boardwalk, and to and from the boardwalk and the meeting that occurs on the sand from the street that smoke. When they're advised, which they are on a regular basis by the residents and merchants in the area, that there is no smoking in that area, they say one of two things. Either, oh, we didn't know that. They hold their cigarette behind their back, or they place it lit on the garbage can or the top of the boardwalk railing until you walk by, and then they pick it up again, thinking that you won't notice when you can still smell it. Or they say, F you, and they don't care. Now, going to the issue of the supervisors, myself personally and a number of the other residents and merchants have attempted to take the reasonable person approach in talking with them in a courteous way about their supervising people. The response we get from these meeting leaders, who have been meeting leaders for a number of years, is we can't be responsible for these people and get off of it and go about your life, quit bothering us, all the way through to confrontational statements and behaviors. There have been regular complaints to the city, which Mr. Kiff has previously acknowledged, both to him, don't envy him that, and others of the city, because the enforcement road path has never been clear, and I believe still is not. But those complaints have occurred and been registered for at least 5 years, and to no avail. So I guess what I wonder is, are these people that lead the meetings at these locations and that participate in the meetings ever going to be motivated to cooperate? And my concern is that they're not. The majority of them are not the people that have attended those 20-plus year meetings. The majority of them are people that do not live in this area. They're churning through their programs. They like going to meetings at the beach. They're driven there. They can hang out. And so there is no motivation for them to cooperate. May I have another half a minute, please?
No, you may have a couple of seconds.
Okay. So I ask the council not to agree to this proposal and to agree to an ordinance that is carved and crafted with an even hand and applied universally, and that is committed to enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this?
My name is Lenny Moeller. I manage Cabo Cantina. Coming into this, I kind of really opposed the idea of a new code, just because it's a new code that's just not going to get enforced. You've mentioned that it is all about enforcement of code, and that the strength of it is the enforcement of it. This Oberman story moved me. I mean, I think it's, for residents that live in the area, I think it's really important, that we keep the area clean. And I think that I would just challenge the people that are in front of me to get onto the people that actually enforce the code to do that. Changing it, I don't think really is going to do a whole lot. I mean, whether it's 25 feet or 100 feet, 100 yards, 2 miles, or the whole city. I come up on stop signs that I see people throw their cigarettes out of their car, and I don't like that. I don't like it. I mean, I quit smoking 20 years ago. I know what a scourge it is. So, I guess my big thing here is just to encourage, not so much change, but enforcement of what we've got.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on this? All right, I'm bringing it back. A question for staff. The question about the bikes and 48 hours, how did we arrive at that? Was there anything special about that? He made a point that cars don't have to be moved for 72 hours.
I think it was a reasonable amount of time where we saw certain issues occurring on the peninsula where we felt there was a need to be able to remove them in a short period of time to gain access in a couple of areas where code enforcement was having issues with it.
All right.
We're certainly not in the business of going around collecting bikes. That's not our intention. It's where issues occur that we want to be able to react if we need to remove a bike.
Remember, the cars are also parked on a street. They're not necessarily hopefully, they're moved right away if they're blocking something like access to it.
Good point. Thank you for that clarification. Do I have a motion?
I would move the item, except my motion would exclude the city manager's desire to have special exemptions.
What about the request to change the sunset and 7?
And I would, thank you, I would accept that as a change also at 7 p.m.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion?
I did want to comment as I seconded that I do commend the city manager for suggesting this other alternative. This is a tough problem. It's been a tough problem, and so I don't feel badly that this suggestion was made. And we'll need to keep casting about for improvements here. Clearly, what we are left with is increased enforcement and we need to figure out a way to make that happen. I don't think it really can realistically happen with Park Patrol people, because the people that are smoking, I know, are just too confrontational when they're asked to stop. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get the proper police enforcement there.
Councilman Selledge?
Yeah, I will not be supporting the ordinance. I registered my objections to it, and we talked about it at study session, so I won't be supporting it.
All right, thank you. Please vote.
Yeah, well,
Councilman Daigle?
My concerns are somewhat different, and the term bifurcated was used earlier, and it seems like there's two different things here. There's the no smoking aspect, and then there's these fees for park usage. And one of the concerns I have is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, that what's proposed is, for example, if taxpayers are using the park for a pickup game at lunch, that they are then requested by the city to pay a fee for that. Is that true?
A drop-in basketball game? No.
Okay. So
Would be a commercial use where, let's say they hire a basketball coach to assist them with that drop-in game. That becomes a commercial activity.
Okay, because you may recall the complaint. They were playing soccer at lunch. I think even some city employees were involved with it as well. How is that currently being handled?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. When it comes to soccer fields, it's probably our greatest limited resource. It takes a tremendous amount of time to maintain them. We don't have a whole lot of them. We can barely accommodate the leagues that we work with, and we have 20-plus leagues that we're working with to use our athletic fields. In that particular case, we do look very closely at that. And so, for example, if you have a pickup game that's occurring every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it's 2 full-blown teams of adults, yes, we have concerns with that, and we want to meet with that group and most likely put together a use permit for them to use those facilities and contribute back into them. I mentioned that the city puts in a tremendous amount of resources into maintaining those fields, but also our sports groups do as well. Not only volunteer time, but they donate thousands of dollars to keep them at a level that our community expects and really deserves. So the soccer example is a good one, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because it's something that we truly need some teeth in this language to be able to deal with it. And we feel with that particular example versus maybe a family reunion and they come in and drop in and have a soccer game, or maybe a parent is going out there to play with their child, is different than repetitive, ongoing use of a resource like that.
All right. Please vote.
Before you do vote, I want to
yes.
make sure we're real clear on, especially, Laura, do you have the basketball amendment down? We're striking out the sunset. It's 7 to 8.
I do.
You're clear about that? Okay. Well, is it still whichever is later? Because there's no more later.
No more later.
Oh, striking out whichever is later.
It will close it at 7.
We're striking 1104-080B. And then just a question for the city attorney, does this mean this has to come back as first reading again, or can it come back as second reading?
No, it can come back as second reading with those changes.
All right, please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I will read the title, Ordinance Number 2012-6, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach, amending Chapter 11.04 of the Newport Beach Municipal Code pertaining to parks, park facilities, and beaches, and repealing Section 11.08.080 of the Newport Beach Municipal Code pertaining to smoking on city beaches. With Councilmember Selledge voting no, the motion carries.
And Councilman Rosansky didn't vote.
Oh, you are correct. My apologies.
Before we get to, thank you very much. Before we get to item number 20, Mr. City Attorney, we need to reconsider.
Yes, there's an item that you consider tonight that we're asking that you reconsider. Kim Brand, if I could ask her to come back up here. In essence, the PC text that was adopted in regards to item number 6 contemplated that the PC text in regards to item number 5 would be adopted first, and that the PC text in regard to item number 6 would be adopted second. Because item number 5 was a continued, there's going to need to be some modifications to the PC text related to item number 6. And so I would request that you reconsider the item, rescind your previous action, and then it would be basically a first reading of that ordinance with those modifications and then have to come back for second reading.
Councilman Selich?
So you're saying we're reconsidering item number 5 or item number 6?
Reconsidering item number 6, which I had told you there would be no delay related to number 5, but I was wrong in that regard.
Number 6, you mean?
In relation to number 6, that's correct.
In relation to number 6.
What are the changes?
Yes, if I may, I'll go ahead and indicate what they are. In the ordinance that was up for second reading, there's a reference on handwritten page number 5 under decision, item number 1. It needs to be revised to read the Newport Country Club Plan Community Development Plan, PC-47, shall be adopted as depicted in Exhibit A, attached hereto and incorporated by reference. And then the remainder of the changes are in Exhibit B, which is the Plan Community Development text. So very simply, the Plan Community text needs to be revised to only reflect regulations pertaining to the golf club portion of the property, not the entire property, which contemplated development of the tennis club, the villas, and the bungalows. So the PC text that is attached to the ordinance would need to be revised to delete references to those 3 development components. And it's actually very straightforward. There are 3 sections within the PC text that would need to be deleted. That's Section 3.2 related to the tennis club, Section 3.3 related to the villas, and Section 3.4 related to the bungalows. And then there's some minor language in the introduction and purpose that references those 3 development components, and that would need to be struck as well.
So does that mean that we have to reintroduce the ordinance and go back through the first and second reading again?
No, you can actually have the first reading this evening and then bring it back for second reading
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
at the next meeting.
Do we have to reconsider this, or can we approve this and then bring forward amendments to it later?
You would be approving it with the first reading with the amendments as that I've just described.
Right. Well, given the possibility of litigation arising from this, a reconsideration means it goes to the next hearing. You can't sort of pull back an item and take a different action.
No, you can reconsider it at the same meeting.
So you're asking us first to rescind our first vote? Is that?
Yeah, so you would be rescinding your first vote, and then you would, after you rescind the first vote, and then you would basically consider the ordinance with the amendments that Ms. Brandt just outlined for you, and then it'd come back for a second reading at the next meeting.
All right. Is there a motion?
Well, wait a minute. There's another action we can take. We can rescind the motion on item number 5, then we don't have to change number 6. I mean, the motion to continue item number 5 was based on the fact that item number 6 was not going to be held up. I mean, that's the basis I voted on it for. So I think I would be in favor of rescinding item number 5 so that we don't hold up the Balboa Bay Club. I mean, that's the basis we made the motion on.
But at this point, I mean, they had requested, and they're not here to discuss it. It seems like we're getting ourselves into even more of a mess.
Yeah, that's why I think you have to handle these things in a future meeting that's publicly noticed, reopen the public hearing.
Well, if we're going to do that, then we ought to go ahead and take Kimberly's recommendation and make the changes to the PC text, have the first reading tonight, and then deal with it as a second reading at the next meeting. So I'd make that motion.
Wait a minute. Well, first we have to have a motion to rescind.
I'll make the motion to rescind.
I'll second both of those.
Is there public comment on this particular motion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously to rescind.
All right. So then,
Okay, I'll move to amend the PC text as recommended by the Community Development Director.
Second.
is there any public comment on this?
It'd be the ordinance and the PC text.
The ordinance and the PC text.
Second.
With Mayor Gardner voting no, the motion carries.
And so we're clear, what we've done is we've approved item 6 in a way that has cleaned it up and separated it from the disposition of item 5. That requires it to come back for a second reading at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, in essence, basically what you've done is the PC text originally contemplated that would cover both properties. So basically what you've done this evening is you've just narrowed it so it only covers the single property and no longer covers both properties. And cleaned it up so it'll come back for second reading at the next meeting.
Everybody comfortable? All right.
Does that in any way affect the road right-of-way, the easement to Armstrong's?
If I may answer, the PC text does not describe that level of detail related to any on-site circulation. So the answer is no, it does not.
All right. Item number 20. We already voted. These are our priorities.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. So at your special meeting on January 23rd, we left that meeting with a number of things on the whiteboards, and I think the direction at that time was to come back to you with, I guess what I just end up calling a work plan chart to kind of say, with each thing that you talked about, what do we as staff know that we're going to be working on, and are funds allocated to do that? Who would work on it? That's the next column. And then if the answer to the question as to whether or not it's in the 2012 work plan is no, then what it might take to accomplish that in 2012. And the final column there is what is definitely a plan-to-plan item. And I guess as I'm thumbing through this, I see a typo or two, including on page 2 of 5 in the middle talk about what to do with the current old City Hall site, the land exchange agreement, if any. And we do have within our work plan some of the planning ability, as well as we're intending to, during this year at least, do a demolition. We don't want this to be an unattractive eyesore. I guess that's redundant, isn't it? But let's just say attractive eyesore. It doesn't work. So that's certainly in the goal there. So I welcome your questions and comments about that, and certainly if you caught any of the mistakes I may have made in there. But otherwise, the recommended action is to consider this your finalized listing of priorities for 2012.
I thought this was a very helpful way to look at it, so I really appreciated this as a document. Do I have any other comments? Is there any public comment on this?
I have a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. Oh, Mayor. Councilman Henn?
The West Newport item here, city facilities, corporate yard, et cetera. I just have a concern that we're losing momentum on that issue and that we really do need to move it forward, and there's not really any mention of timeline in here. Can you give us a better feeling for that, Dave?
Let me see Steve back there. Do you have any thoughts for us, Mr. Public Works Director?
I believe that our needs assessment for the corporation yards should be completed later this month. At that point in time, we can start additional planning studies for the rest of the, decide what we need to do in order to consolidate those two yards and continue functions as you've directed, and then move into the kind of the planning stage. So a lot of it's going to depend on what happens with that needs assessment and how we combine the two yards and what work may be required in order to do that. So I think that's kind of, as I see, the next step in that progression of getting to where we want to be with moving the West Newport facilities forward. The other thing that we can consider, too, is looking at how we might phase that site. And there may be things that need to stay there for a while, and can we work around those facilities? A good point might be the trash transfer station. If that issue isn't resolved right away, perhaps there's a way to look at the upper half of that parcel to move forward with the project. So I think that's we're kind of really, I guess the short answer is we're still in that planning stage, and we don't really have any milestones set at this point until we investigate further.
But we'll come back with you, given what Steve just said, and potentially as early as one of the first study session in March. But let us talk at a staff level and get back with you directly.
Yeah, I'm fine for you to take some time, but I really would like to see a timeline established, for moving that process forward.
Any, Councilman Hill?
Well, ironically enough, my comment was the exact same comment. I think that the West Newport Beach facility study, which I think is the other topic we were trying to think of earlier tonight, is very critical, in fact, to the redeployment of the existing City Hall site. And I think it's a significant economic opportunity that will help fund many of our future facilities. And the domino effect of it, and I think it's something that needs to be a top priority, because I don't think we can resolve where we're going with this site until we know what's happening with that site. And so I see it very related, and I think it needs to be a very high priority.
Okay. All right, any other comment? Any public comment on this item? All right. Then we receive and file. I think we all set there.
Actually, I did have one further comment then. If this is, would you just please email me a final version of this, which may be the one you presented to us, but I'd just like to have an electronic.
Yeah, I'd like to clean up some of those little typos, and I'll email one and put it on the website for the public.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, is there a motion for reconsideration?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to move reconsideration of item number 12 from our previous meeting. That was the Corona Del Mar car show parking lot fee agreement. I think there's some misunderstanding amongst some members of the council, at least, and staff, as far as what we were approving that agreement. It was my understanding when I voted for the action that we were approving a 3-year agreement with the Corona Del Mar car show. The staff report mentioned a side letter. I had been presented with information that side letter was for 3 years, but the side letter wasn't attached to the staff report. And I think maybe some persons on the council felt it was a 1-year agreement. I think Mr. Kiff either thinks it's 1 year or he's confused. I'm not sure what his latest position on that one is. So I'd like to move reconsideration of that item.
Second.
And I guess we put that on the next agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other items?
I think we have to vote.
All right, public comment? All right. Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
We're going to close the meeting.
Oh, excuse me. I'd also like to make part of that, there's this whole thing of whether they have to apply for SEAC or not, so that depending on what happens when we reconsider this, that if it is not a 3-year agreement, then the deadline for them is extended for the SEAC application.
Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Any public comment on that? October.
It's in October, September. Yeah.
Well, we're approving it for this year anyway, so they won't need a...
I think that was part of the confusion, was it being approved for this year or next year?
I assume we were approving it for this October. Is that not accurate?
I think there's enough confusion that we should talk about it again. Because, I thought it was the past year.
All right, please vote.
Yeah.
All right, is there anything else on this?
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. We're
Yes. Well, they paid an amount, and then the way we calculated, they deserve a credit back this year. Yes. Okay.
No, I don't think they want money back, but I think that's the way the formula worked out. They were happy.
That's the way the formula worked out.
They were
right?
happy.
They overpaid.
Let sleeping dogs lie, but the way next time we'll talk about it.
I'd like to close the meeting in honor of Dolores Otting, a longtime resident and very familiar face here in council. Dolores was born in New York and raised in Massachusetts, and you could certainly tell that from her accent. She eventually moved to Newport Beach and made this her home, and it was here that she met and married her husband Tony, and together they owned Dewey's, a trash hauling business, and they later sold the company to Waste Management. She was a tireless community advocate and volunteer who championed a number of high-profile causes over the years and advocated for transparency and fiscal responsibility in her local government. She spent council's evenings here, sharing her research and thoughts on issues ranging from John Wayne Airport to water quality to group homes and many more. She was a regular around City Hall and would often stop into the various departments just to say a quick hello or share her quick smile. Her volunteer commitments included serving as the vice chair of the city's Environmental Quality Affairs Committee and as president of the Newport Harbor Republican Women. And she was survived by her husband, Tony, her parents, 2 sisters, and a brother. She was someone who brought so much heart and passion to what she did. When she stepped off of EQUAC, that was sort of the end of the Christmas party. She was the kind of person who would make sure that everything got organized. And I remember, as far as her involvement with the Newport Harbor Republican Women, every year at the Balboa Island Parade, Dolores is there with her red, white, and blue with all the other women marching along. And she was just very unselfish, I must say. And everybody seemed to know her, and she seemed to know everybody. Very outgoing. And I think you also had something, Leslie?
Yes, and that would be a tribute to Todd Schooler. And after a brave bout with heart failure, Todd Schooler passed away last Thursday while riding his bicycle with some 50 other citizens of Newport Mesa. He was 58. We see these cyclists pedaling about our streets in colorful anonymity. Naturally, they represent a cross-sections of our citizens, parents, sons and daughters, doctors, lawyers, contractors, professionals, taxpayers of all stripes. And the alpha dude with the lamb chop, sideburns, and tree trunks for legs, that would be Todd Schooler, father, husband, architect. The same Todd Schooler who worked tirelessly with the cities of Newport Beach and Costa Mesa, providing design and innovation for new homeowners. When Todd, the architect, worked with the city building departments, he found common ground. When Todd, the architect, helped to rewrite the city zoning codes, he found common ground. When Todd, the architect, worked tirelessly with contractors and Coastal Commission, he found common ground. When Todd, the family man, was needed, he would drop everything on the spot. He was a living model of unconditional love and strength. Man, he loved his son, Bobby. Bobby is now age 24 and is to be married in 2 weeks. Todd would have been the life of the wedding party. He will be remembered for pushing his mind and his body. A USC graduate, Todd loved sports. When Todd, the pro-am athlete, was committed to a sport, as in beach volleyball in the late 70s to road bike racing since, he was driven and he was fierce. He always played hard, and he always played fair, and he won. Todd won with dignity and with integrity. Mind you, he was no pushover. He welcomed debate. Some found him abrupt and harsh at times. I found him refreshing and honest. It's always hard when a pillar in our community goes, especially at a far too young age of 58. I have fond memories of Todd and the cycling community. I bicycle myself and train with a group that meets near UCI every Tuesday and Thursday at the absurd time of 6:15 a.m. Hence, it is known as the Coffee Crew Ride. This will continue to be attended by athletes of every level who desire to live like Todd, that is with courage and overcoming fear. Thinking of Todd in those countless cold, dark mornings where for many years he read the pack, a Native American poem comes to mind. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the stars that shine at night. Please stand not at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. So we will fly on, ride on, live, play, and love. Todd, you will be missed. Todd is survived by his son, Bobby, and his beloved wife, Gina.
In honor of Dolores Otting and Todd Schooler, we close this meeting.